Hello scholars, last video cut out in the middle of this, so I'm starting the next one here. This is part two. So South Asia, which is known as India mostly, Hinduism is here, and then Muslims arrive, and then the Delhi Sultanate is a Muslim Turkic sultanate. So they introduce Islam to India, but never convert more than 20% of the population. Hinduism remains a dominant religion here. And all that entails, and Hinduism and the caste system are still the dominant whole social religious system. So nothing changes there, but it's just the beginning of Islam having an impact. The Middle East, there's a lot more going on here. So first of all, long before 1200, Islam is dominant, 622. And a really important thing about Islam is the tradition of religious and political rule with one leader. And these leaders become known as caliphs, and the kingdoms or empires, caliphates. This starts with Muhammad, who is a religious political ruler. And then right away, too, they have the Sharia law. So then you have religious law being the government's law. Pilgrimage to Mecca is going to be big throughout history. And then the Sufis are going to be big on spreading the religion all through into period 1 through 1200, 1450. Before period 1 starts, we have a major caliphate, the Umayyads, who do most of the conquering for Islam. And the Abbasid comes along, and they're kind of in their fading time when our course starts in 1200. But they're still going big. They still have Baghdad, a huge commercial city in Iraq. They have their House of Wisdom and all the international exchange of information that's going on there. Furthermore, I'm making sure I don't screw this up. The Seljuk Turks, though, are a part of the Abbasid Caliphate during 1200 because until they get conquered by the Mongols, because politically the Caliphate was weak. These Turkic Muslim invaders have an impact. I don't know if that will really be very important on the AP exam. Also, the Muslim world is rocked during this period by, not rocked, but the Crusades occur. And basically, the main thing about the Crusades that matters is it's like things like the interest in sugar and other Islamic products go back to Europe. The Ottoman Empire has started during this period, but we'll deal with the Ottoman Empire in the next period PowerPoint because they're more important there. But it is the beginning of the Ottoman Empire. Really important during this period is the Islam is dominant on all the trade routes by 1,000, and they're going to be dominant all the way through until the Europeans start to take over in the 1500s. An example of Islamic trade routes is their scholar Ibn Battuta that goes all over from India to West Africa, Swahili city-states, going on pilgrimage, and just showing how the Islamic world is rocking at this point. The maps show it really well. You can see that long before 1200, Islam has conquered all over the Middle East, into India, Central Asia, Spain. So by 1500, all the way through period 1, we see that Islam is huge in India, in the Swahili city-states of East Africa because of trade, in West Africa because of trade. It's going to get to Malacca by 1,000 and turn Srivijaya from a Buddhist-dominated area to a Muslim-dominated area. So Islam is huge during this period. On to Europe. Yay! So, by 1200, Europe is improving from the Dark Ages, but they still have feudalism, and you should know what that means, that it's decentralized rule with weak kings, lords. They have knights. At the bottom are the serfs, and these poor serfs are working on the manor, and the serfs get a little bit of live with their family, get a little land, but they are kind of trapped. Not quite slaves, but definitely a form of forced labor. Sorry, serfs. It's rough. Moving on. Throughout this period, Europe is still decentralized kingdoms, though you do get some larger states forming. So, kingdoms the size of modern European countries are forming during this period. but still Europe will never be fully unified. Really important, though, is after the fall of Rome, please remember the Catholic Church is essentially an independent, powerful religious entity throughout this period. And their rule over Christianity in Western Europe really won't be challenged until the Protestant Reformation. But even then, the Catholic Church remains big and independent all the way through history, and certainly through this period. Moving on, some stuff. The Catholic Church does the Crusades, showing their power from 1100 to 1300. Also, Venice, Italy, I think by 1000, is a huge trade hub and benefits from all the trade. And yes, Italian Renaissance, again, because Italy's big in trade and very wealthy. A lot of art and philosophy starts there with the Renaissance. Printing press, 1450. Really important is Prince Henry's School of Navigation and the Portuguese maritime voyaging that starts in the 1400s, basically setting the stage for Europeans going to America and Europeans getting into the Indian Ocean. But please remember, Prince Vasco da Gama from Portugal will get into the Indian Ocean right before 1500. Moving on, Byzantine Empire, backing up a bit, please remember they're going during this period in Eastern Europe. Thought I had tech difficulty there. They have the Eastern Orthodox Church, so there is that church split that occurs around 1000. And Byzantine Empire, their leader of their church is also their emperor, so a little different than the Pope, who is independent from the kings. Later, the Ottoman Empire will start during this period and slowly encroach on the Byzantine Empire, but the fall of Constantinople won't be until 1453. Also, there is a down point for Europe, which is the Black Death, a huge loss of a third to half of their population. Sorry, Europe, not fun. Moving on. Americas. In Mesoamerica, before 1200, we've got a tradition of agriculture and monumental architecture and human sacrifice and Mesoamerican polytheism with the Olmecs and the Mayans. Americas have huge cities, including Teotihuacan, again, all before the Aztecs. Mayans have cities too. So then during this period is the Aztecs, and they have their huge city, Tenochtitlan, and they're known for human sacrifice and bloodletting, taking Mesoamerican religion to a whole new level. They do have a lot of trade, but a really important thing is to remember that the way they tax the outlying areas is through tribute collection, like a group tax on the people. And otherwise, they kind of left their conquered people alone and didn't try to control them very much, unlike the Incas, which we'll get to in a minute. In South America, I left this off my Unit 0 stuff, is Moche. And I'm sorry, the date for Moche is basically year 0 to 800 is an example for context of an earlier agricultural civilization in South America. Not that important, other than if you get an Inca essay and you need context, that they had earlier civilizations there with agriculture and the polytheism and everything they have down there. They also had Quipu in the Moche, the knotted cord. So the Inca Empire, they don't have writing, but they have a very extensive civilization. Other than that, they have record keeping with their Quipu. They have extensive roads. They have terrace farming. And unlike the Aztecs, they were a much more unifying government, enforcing a common language and a common sun god on the people, and also very organized Mita service where all the conquered people have to work for the government for part of the year. So a little different system of effectively taxation. You know, these guys are using their people, not collecting taxes, but by requiring that they work. Moving forward. There's a map showing the Aztecs in Mesoamerica, Incas in the south. Africa and trans-Saharan trade. Moving forward here. Basically, trans-Saharan trade's well in place in Unit 0. And there's trade kingdoms in Unit 0 like Ghana. Moving on into period 1, the next one is Mali. So the main thing to know about all this is trade is bringing Islam to West Africa, and then you have trade kingdoms that are profiting from taxing this trade. They are Islamic, and there's also a big supply of gold in the south of the kingdoms, which is a big trade product that they have. Swahili city-states, I'll talk about them in a minute when I get to the Indian Ocean trade. Moving forward. Here's your map, Trans-Saharan trade, showing the trade routes bringing the Islam to the kingdoms where they are getting wealthy from taxing trade. Remember Mansa Musa and going on pilgrimage and having so much gold that he's impacting the economy of Egypt. Silk Road starts way back in Unit 0 and 100 BC. And moving on to this period, it's the same trade goods, same camel caravans. Nothing's really changed technologically. The big thing is the Mongols unifying the Silk Road during this period, which is going to make for more trade and easier travel until the Black Death. And we know what happens there. It's going to shut down the trade routes. We know what happens. Evidence of this ease of travel in the Mongol period is our buddy Marco Polo. Goes and writes his book bragging about the silk, what's in China. Later going to be used by Christopher Columbus, motivating him to go to find Asia. This period is also the Mongol period is going to lead to a huge tech transfer. This is when gunpowder gets to Europe, and the gunpowder empires of the Middle East, and we'll talk about that later. Some of us wish maybe this hadn't happened, but it happened, and now we got a crap ton of gunpowder weapons. Go USA. Moving forward. There's your Silk Road map. So this trade route's well in play before 1200, but again, the Mongols just make it work really well for a while. Indian Ocean trade, again, is an ancient trade route. But during the period 1200 to 1500, you're going to have the same trade goods, other than more and more bulk items because of better shipping. And you're going to have improved sailing technology. By 1200, the compass, the astrolabe, the stern post rudder have pretty much diffused. And so maybe not every boat, but most boats, a lot of boats on the Indian Ocean trade route are going to have this technology. The monsoon winds, though, are still in play because we're still using sailboats. That's not going to change until the steamboat in the 1800s. The Muslims by 1000 are going to be the dominant traders. And a big turning point will be when the Europeans show up in 1500 and start to take over. And I'll talk about that later. This is the time of the Swahili city-states where Islamic merchants bring Islam to East Africa, and then Islam takes hold there. Islam will also go to the Strait of Malacca and take hold there, kind of taking over from Buddhism there. Not that Buddhism ever goes away. And then again, 1500, the show's going to change dramatically with Europeans. There's your Indian Ocean trade route map. Again, it shows the monsoon winds and all the places goods are traveling. And remember, trade goods are getting from China all the way to East Africa. All right, that's it. I'm done. I hope this is helpful.